Now, we've started this discussion and we thought, why not dig a little bit deeper and talk about disasters, emergency situations, and how people living with diabetes can prepare for them. So I'm now inviting somebody to the stage who's written about this, disaster preparedness, many times. Welcome to the stage, Corinna.
Hello, good morning. Yes.
Hi, Corinna. Thank you so much for coming. So you've written about this many times. How come? What's your personal relation to this topic?
Well, my personal relationship to the topic of disaster preparedness is that everywhere I've ever lived has been subject to some kind of disaster or emergency, either man-made or natural. And so, you know, I grew up in California where there's earthquakes. People were always worried about that, but they're honestly few and far between. And then I moved to Hawaii and got to experience hurricanes and tropical storms and tsunami warnings, which are a little more common and take more active preparation. And now I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and I have to say, this summer in particular, I don't think we've gone 1 week without a wildfire somewhere in Washington or Oregon.
And of course, we've all seen the impact of the wildfires in Hawaii as well.
Yes, Lahaina is ash now, and it will take decades for it to come back. And it's very sad. And the same thing has happened in so many other communities. Northern California, a member of my own extended family lost his house. It took him 5 years to rebuild. And the community is still not back to what it was before. You know, so I just want to echo what the last speaker said about if we're not paying attention to climate change, global warming, the hand of God, whatever you want to call it, then we're walking around blind. And, you know, my big message is you have to prepare for the potential for a disaster. And for as people who live with diabetes, it's that much more important because we're vulnerable to things that if we weren't evacuated or sheltering where there wasn't any power or avoiding flood or whatever, you know, we would be able to live and thrive under normal circumstances. But when these things happen, our daily diabetes care is stressed and sometimes gets broken. You know, the first article I wrote about disaster preparedness, I went back and read it, and it seems almost quaint because it was all about, you know, sheltering in place and not having power. So you just need to make sure you have battery backup and all your devices are charged. And, you know, what's happening now is you need to be prepared for the possibility that you're going to have to evacuate quickly, and you don't know what you're going to come back to. So I know one of the things I've done now is all my diabetes supplies, I don't store them on a shelf. I keep them in a carry-on suitcase with rollers. You know, if I have to leave, it's small enough, it's light enough, it's portable enough, I can just grab it and go.
So that would be one of your recommendations, either keep everything in a suitcase or pack an emergency bag?
Well, definitely pack an emergency bag. I mean, the particulars of what any one person does really depends on where they are and what their risks are. If you're in a place that regularly floods, that's a different preparation than someplace that might have an earthquake. If you're somewhere where, you know, the vulnerability is something that you'll get warning, that's a different preparation than something that happens, you know, like that.
Yeah.
The other thing to realize is that, yes, there will be organizations like Red Cross, Red Crescent who come in and help, but they are going to prepare for the general population. They are not going to have a lot of diabetes specific or, you know, whatever healthcare health condition specific supplies or preparations. And living in Hawaii, it really taught me. I lived on Oahu, which is the most urban island, but all the neighbor islands, when someone really got sick, and when I say really got sick, it could be something as common as a heart attack or a stroke. Mm-hmm. They were stabilized on their island, but then they had to be medevaced to Oahu, where the big hospitals are. So in an emergency, you have to realize that all of the healthcare that you're used to having access to, the doctors, the supplies, the whatever, may not be available to you. And it may require being medevaced somewhere. And that may be very difficult to arrange or have done.
Yeah. So somebody in the comments is saying things we normally never really think about. Caro, just like me, lives in Germany, and we're usually very, very privileged and lucky when it comes to these kinds of disasters. But you've also brought with you some materials and links that we will share in the comments so that people can get informed. Do you have any final tips for the people watching?
I would say the links are a good place to start. Nothing is going to be comprehensive or particular to you. You really need to learn about what's going on in your community, what the vulnerabilities are, mm-hmm. how your community and government have prepared for the possibility of an emergency. And then you really need to think through, what are all the things I need to be able to manage my diabetes for at least a week? Mm-hmm. And then if one of those things fails, say your CGM doesn't work, or you run out of cannulas for your insulin pump, what's your backup?
Yeah.
And and have that packed as well, and practice. Like, I know people who use insulin pumps, sometimes they say, oh, I've forgotten how to do MDI. Well,
that's gonna be a problem. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that could be a real problem in an emergency. And I would say, take a pump break, refresh your memory when it's not an emergency, and then you'll be better prepared. Yeah. I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound like an alarmist, but it's happening, and it's happening now, and we really do need to pay attention.
Yeah, and it's so good to get tips from somebody who has experience, unfortunately, but we're really grateful to you for sharing these tips and recommendations. So thank you.
Thank you.